And now our continuing series on the greatest songs of all time. From 1964, The Beatles, A Hard Day's Night. Written by John Lennon and Paul McCartney. Produced by George Martin. The Rolling Stone magazine writes, the title comes from a Ringo Starr malapropism, the product of an all-day and night recording session. Lennon was fond of these Ringoisms, which also included Tomorrow Never Knows. And he wrote the title track overnight based on it. He shared the lead vocals with McCartney. He said the only reason Paul sang on Hard Day's Night was because I couldn't reach the high notes. It's the title track from the Beatles' third studio album. It's from their first motion picture. It was the first Beatles album to be entirely recorded on 4-track tape. It was also the first Beatles album to feature only original compositions. And it's the only Beatles album where all the songs are written by Lennon and McCartney. Lennon's works dominate the album. He's the primary author on 10 out of the 13 tracks. This is also one of 3 Beatles albums, along with Let It Be and Magical Mystery Tour, in which Ringo doesn't have a lead vocal. It was recorded April 16, 1964, Studio 2 of Abbey Road. It took them less than 3 hours to finish it. The 9th take was the one released. In an Associated Press report, the movie's producer, Walter Shinson, described his recollection of the day. He said, around 8:30 in the morning, there were John and Paul with guitars at the ready and the lyrics scribbled on matchbook covers. They played it, and the next night they recorded it. He declared it had the right beat and the arrangement was brilliant. These guys were geniuses. John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, Ringo Starr, and on the piano, George Martin. The song topped the charts in both the UK and the US when it was released as a single. The American and British singles, as well as both the American and British albums with the same title, all held the top position on their respective charts for a couple of weeks in August of 1964. It's the first time that any artist had accomplished this feat. On the Billboard charts, 13 weeks, a top spot of number 1. Certainly one of the greatest songs of all time. From 1964, The Beatles.